Hello, my name's Dan Hawes from Graduate Recruitment Bureau. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the GRN Masterclass event podcast. This is the second event of 2019, kindly hosted by the ICAEW in central London. We heard from two speakers. The first one was Sharon Spice from ICAEW, talking about her interactions with students and employers over the last 3 months. Next, we heard from Letty Kay, a strategist from the marketing agency Zone. She shared with us lots of insights from working with big brand names and how they market to a young audience. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. We're going to start with the view from campus. This is something Sharon does at every GRN. So she speaks to students every day. She speaks to recruiters. So she's going to be feeding back about the view from campus, what's going on in the last 3 months. We'll then have a Q&A. That's a really key part of our events. It's an opportunity for you to ask any questions and get any clarity on anything. We'll then have a refreshment break back out there, and then we'll come back in to hear from Letty about student marketing and how you can attract the best graduates. Then we're going to have another Q&A where you have an opportunity to speak to Letty, and we'll aim to finish about 11ish. Now, you also have the opportunity to ask questions using Slido. So if you don't want to ask any questions, go on the website, but use the code GRN, and I'll be checking any questions that you may ask. Be social. The hashtag for this event is GRN, and our handles are at the GRB team and at ICAEW. Okay, whistle stop tour about GRB. If you don't know who we are, Graduate Recruitment Bureau. Been going for over 20 years. Placed over 8,000 graduates. We have 70 staff, mainly in Brighton, but also in London. And we have 4 divisions, not just graduate level, but also experienced high level as well. Over those years, we've supplied talent to many, many clients. Some big, some small, but they're all looking for the best of the best. GRN is what this is about. This was set up primarily to bring in-house graduate recruiters together. To my knowledge, there's no other forum like this. And it's an opportunity to talk about things that are pressing in your lives at the moment and ultimately make you better graduate recruiters. We have around 2,300 members. We hit that mark last week, so I'm delighted that some of you are here today. Now, we do limit numbers to these events so we can encourage a good mix of people from different sectors, different backgrounds. We try and get 30 or 40, but this, by the looks of it, is a bit of a record, hence why we're in the auditorium. Previous speakers have covered such things as graduate retention, introductions, recruiting in Europe, and trends in student attraction. So, over the course of a year, we try and cover different aspects of graduate recruitment. And we also have a podcast. We're going to be recording this event as well. And that's mainly for members who can't make this event in London. And new for this year, we have different levels of membership. And I can talk to you about our VIP membership at the end, should you wish to. Okay. Previous attendees, just to give you a flavour of who you're in the room with. These are some of our members that have been along before. So you can see a broad range of sectors, different size of recruiters, but they're all sharing very, very similar problems. And there's very few opportunities to come together face to face and share your challenges and successes as well. So, I'd like to start with Sharon, our first speaker, who's going to be giving you her view from campus. Sharon.
Firstly, good morning everyone. Welcome to ICAEW. This is a fairly new room, so we've had the whole building, or at least half of it, fitted out fairly recently. So you're in the new part. That's been spent, I think, about 2 million or so to actually refit the building, so it's more IT appropriate. I look very different on that photo. So the person who did that photo was a member of my team. He said I look better on that photo than I do now. It's been installed, but I'll go with it. So what I'm going to try and do today is, I'm certainly not going to do a sales pitch. What I will do though is just briefly explain who we are, because we're a professional body, and why we're actually going out on campus, because I think some people won't actually appreciate that. A lot of the professional bodies do try and go out. And then what I'll do is share with you some insights. So we have a a reasonable sized team who go out to around, I think it's around about 80 core universities, but we target all the universities in the UK. And we target about 4,500 schools and colleges. So we've got quite a number. But also we have campus ambassadors. So I expect a number of you to use campus ambassadors for insight and also promoting your brand. So you might call them brand ambassadors. But we also use it for a similar reason. So we'll share some of the insight that we've gathered from those people as well. If there are any questions, I think they kind of come at the end. And your little buttons, just press those by your speaker, and that enables you to speak. Okay, so ICW, I will whiz through this, but I do need to set the context of who we are. So we're a global professional body. We were established in 1880 and actually started off with our qualification, the ACA Chartered Accountant qualification, just 2 years later after we were established. We do work in the public interest, so although we have qualifications, we have students, we have members, but actually we're there to represent the public, and I'll go on to speak very shortly about that in a second. We have around 150,000 members, it's actually over that, and we work in around 153 countries. For us, actually, we're part of a big organisation called Chartered Accountants Worldwide, and we represent about 1.8 million chartered accountants globally around the world who actually do a similar qualification to the ACA qualification that we offer here. So these are the 4 key areas that a public body would offer, but the main bit I'm going to talk about really is our qualification, because that's what we go out to talk about on campus. But we're there for training and qualifications for students, but also for our members. We regulate our members, so if they're being a bit naughty, they sign up to a code of conduct. They're regulated, so if they do anything naughty, and you might have seen some of that recently in the media, we obviously go and have a chat with them, and we might do other things to work with those members. And we also support the members, so they don't come in just do our qualification, we make sure they're supported throughout their journey. And thought leadership, I'll mention this because this is something we actually do on campus to gain profile. So we have a massive team here who are specialists in lots of different areas. So it could be in kind of accounting itself, it could be financial services, it could be charity sector. And what we try and do is use the expertise here to actually go out on campus to run some lectures and to again help us gain profile. So that's another way we actually get students' attention. Okay, so roughly we engage with around 22,000 students, that's just in the UK. We do have a range of regional offices globally. We do around 350 face-to-face events, that's actually reduced substantially, and that's across schools, colleges and universities. And we reduce those mainly in kind of the careers fairs, because we found some of those weren't really working for us and giving us the results that we wanted. But that's quite a considerable number of events, and as mentioned, we've got quite a small team who do that. So what do we do on campus? Well, we probably do a number of the similar things that you would do. So we run skills sessions, we do a skills audit session where we'll go in, we'll work with the students, we'll get them to think about the career as a chartered accountant, but also actually going into business as well, so not just being going into accountancy itself. And we get them to think about what skills they have, and then we get them to think about what skills they might need, and then we help them try and match up some of those skills. So that's the session of trying to get students to think about skills they already have, but they don't just appreciate it yet. So we sit with them and say that if you're doing sports club or if you're doing this, actually that means you're a leader, or you're doing this, you're a good networker, and we help them translate and transition some of those skills onto their CV. We do sessions around resilience, also commercial awareness sessions, because that's what the employers are telling us they really, really need. And we go onto campus to act not only on behalf of the Institute, but we talk about profession, but mainly, to be quite honest, we go to talk about them and support our employers. So we work with around 5,500 global employers, and we go onto campus and we talk about what we're doing, but also what the employers are doing, what they're there to offer, and we try and sell their brand for them as well. The key things that you may not be doing, we run parents events, So for us, the influence of it is really, really key. They're a really hard target for us to reach. I imagine quite similar for many of you. But we run quite successful parents events. Ria, who's at the back of the room, has run a number of those. But we appreciate that, they're one of the key influencers, so we have to engage them in what this profession might do for them. We also do a number of speed meets. I don't know how many of you do speed meets, but we find they work particularly well. So that's a speed networking session where we'll have a number of our employers who come along, we'll have a student sit in front of them. It's a bit like dating, unfortunately, but I'm sure it's a bit more of a, hopefully the end result is a job, potentially or an interview, whereas dating is not quite always that way. But those sessions work really, really well. The students like the informality of those type of sessions, so they're something that we try to do. Okay, so this is the main bit. So as I mentioned, we go out, we talk to our students, we talk to the key influencers, so that'll be the lecturers, careers advisors. We find out what they need. We talk to our employers and say, what do you need us to do on your behalf on campus? How can we help you? And we also use our own campus ambassadors. So we have, and I'll probably get this figure now, but we have about 45. My ultimate aim is for us to have around 80 campus ambassadors. But that number fluctuates as we keep recruiting them, and we lose some of the campus ambassadors depending on when they're due to finish with us. So the questions that I'm going to run through to give you a bit of our insight, some of it might not be relevant to you. You might be sat there thinking we do this every day, but I hope some of you will take away something new from this. Okay, I don't know if you can see this, I'm blind as a bat, so I'll try and run through some of these figures. So basically, this is who we're targeting. So our organisation are targeting this number of students because we target every discipline within universities. So if you look at some of those figures, coming out this year, potentially we're looking at around 500,000 postgrads. We're targeting about 1.5 million first degree students, and then there are additional students. So the number and the population that we're actually trying to reach is huge. But for us, we're trying to target all of them in some way because they all can become chartered accountants with us. And this is across about 162 universities in the UK. So between all of us, we've got a huge population of students and talent that we're trying to reach. So the areas I'm going to focus on, so these are the questions I've been asking the team and our campus ambassadors and just general insight that we have. What's proven popular at the moment on campus? What format seems to work well? So when the students are turning up, when the careers advisor is actually supporting going into campus. Level of activity. So is it busy at the moment? Are things changing? Which brands are standing out? So we've asked the team to think about some things that some of the big employers are doing and some of the smaller ones, and say, what's really kind of catching the attention of the students. And then some just general observations I just thought I'd leave you with before we go into questions. Okay, so what's proving popular for us? Networking events hosted by the careers advisors. We work, I imagine, like all of you in this room, very, very closely with careers advisors. They're a crucial resource for us to access. And we basically go to them and say, what do you need? And then that's what we deliver. We don't go to them and say, this is what we'd like to do. And that seems to really help the relationship we have with the careers advisors. But they have their own events, so we obviously go along to those and take part in the networking events. So this is quite a key one, this number 2 one, because this will make sense in one of my following slides. So the recruitment process. The careers advisor, so we run a massive careers advisor event here with universities. So all careers advisors are invited to come here once a year. And one of the key things that they always ask when the employees sit there on the panel is, what's your recruitment process like? What do my students need to prepare for? They're really nervous. Where can they go to find resources to practice? If you can go in as an employer and offer those services, and when it's in bite-sized chunks, or when you do a podcast, or when you do something quite different, if you can offer that, you'll be pushing an open door. Because that's definitely what the careers advisors and the students are looking for. So that's something we try and facilitate. We ourselves don't recruit. We don't recruit the students themselves. We help the employers get those students. So we obviously wouldn't go in and start talking about recruitment processes because every employer is relatively unique or has some uniqueness to it. I mentioned the speed meets, the networking events. They work really, really well. I think again students like those because they can be quite social. So that's one kind of theme that was coming through the feedback that I received. And students like the less formal approach, kind of engaging with the employers. So we try to do kind of networking events, which could be a bit more casual in where they're located as well. So one of the things I got fed back was doing them in a pub. Doing them in a pub works wonders. We haven't done that yet, I don't think, Korea, but again, maybe some of you have been trying that, but they like that idea. They like to be able to relax a little bit in that environment. Interactive sessions. And they don't want to just sit there and be spoken to for an hour from an employer or ourselves. They want to do something which is going to help them get the job. So the things that we run, things like business games, commercial awareness sessions, because what they're then getting out of that is kind of developing some of the skills that the employers and ourselves are saying they're looking for. So they don't just want to be spoken at. I think that'd be quite key. And then this is the other one they kind of like, open sessions. So what I mean by this is they don't want to be told it's just for certain types of people and certain types of courses. The ones that we're finding work quite well are the open sessions where anyone's welcome. So I don't know how many of you are doing those or whether you've been quite closed with some of the groups because you're targeting specific groups. But we're told that actually they like the open sessions. Okay, so what format seems to be working? That first one you'll all know because you've probably been doing this job, in this job for 10 years. This will all be very familiar with when you should be and shouldn't be doing this type of recruitment activity. I guess the other key things to just kind of talk about was the SMS. So people are saying that's a really effective way to communicate. So we send out quite a few emails. We're always looking for different ways to communicate with students because they can ignore those emails quite easily. Feedback from one of the teams, actually SMS is working for them to get people to events. So I don't know if you're using that, but that obviously is something that some of the team are trying. Direct emails via the actual careers advisor or the lecturers. Now the lecturers, again, don't know how much you're working with lecturers, but they're key resource for us also. So what we try to do is actually go in and run guest lectures, and we do that within the current timetable, because again, that is really helpful to the lecturer, but also the student, because you're not impacting their day more than their standard student working hours, as you'd call them. So actually putting something that's within their kind of student day, so it could be lunchtime, it could be actually within one of the lectures, they actually appreciate you doing that. Advertising sessions on the university websites, I'm sure you all do that, but that's something my team came back and said that really, really works. So when we're doing an event, make sure it goes on the university website because that tends to help people turn up. Involvement in individual university employability weeks. A number of the universities have a set week, and they do like clockwork, they'll invite employees in, it's kind of a set structure. The team basically said, you know, those are really important, we need to get booked into those if the universities you want to go to, but make sure you do that early, make sure you have something that on offer that's of interest. So kind of not really just going to do a sales pitch. But to go and maybe offer some skill session or something that's really engaging, this kind of feedback. Now we've got a gentleman here called Vincent, who's at one of our universities. He's a campus ambassador for us. I was just going to ask you, Vincent, are there any other things that you think work well for students, which make them turn up to events?
Thank you very much. We've had at my university invitations to some employers where they do presentations, we go through talks, and students have got the opportunity to ask questions, and they're given an hour or 2 or 3 of work experience. So that seems to work very well. Or even a day out of work experience. that seems to work very well with the students, and we found a lot of interest from students.
So that's a result of that hour's presentation, and then go after work experience as a result of that presentation?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
it's worked very well. One or two chartered accountancy firms have actually been working with the university in that respect.
Okay. I don't know if any of you are trying that, but if an employer who can actually facilitate that amount of work experience, then, I guess you could limit it. You could offer, do they offer it to the top 5 students on a day or something? Because it could get quite...
Yeah, what they do is they invite a group, say 10, then they stagger it. Maybe
okay.
1 or 2 could go in a week, and then the following week a different group goes in, and it seems to work out very well. Yes.
I'll be asking some more questions.
That's all right.
Okay, so what's the level of activity like on campus? This kind of keeps changing, so keep asking the team about this. This time of the year it's probably a bit quieter, but less pop-up stands. And if you think about what I've just said about the fact that the students and the careers advisors are desperate for people to go and talk about the recruitment process, it would appear that actually a number of employers are not running those sessions. So the team have observed that less are doing that. So some are still doing it, but obviously they're noticing that less employers are actually running those sessions. And that's the real hook actually for the student and the careers advisor. So I think that's just something to think about if you're one of those employers sat there who, when you've been looking at your events plan for the year and you're thinking that let's take out some of those sessions, maybe just have a think about that. And a reduction in the interactive sessions, so again, going back to the students have just been spoken at, rather than actually engaging, having a session where they're able to contribute to some sort of discussion, and the fact that some of the employers are actually reducing the number of those as well, just seems an interesting trend, and that seems to be what the students and the careers advisors and lecturers actually want from us. Is there anything else you'd like to comment at your university? Is the activity in terms of employers, has it increased, or are you finding?
Besides the few employers that are collaborating with the university, there isn't much, but we do have activity right through the year, but before February when students start preparing for exams. Yeah.
Okay, so which brands are standing out? I'm mentioning work and name checking on particular employers. Lots of employers do wonderful things, but this was a bit of feedback that came back from the team, that someone offering free coffee gets students to go and have a conversation. And that's probably a pop-up stand that they've put together, and it's amazing. But actually, think about when I was a student many years ago, if someone was offering free stuff, we were there within seconds. So I kind of see how that works, and it's making them stand out whether you like the idea or you don't like the idea. It's obviously attracting attention for that particular employer. This is one I really like the idea of. So one of the universities is running a particular program at the moment where the employers, over a period of the full term, are giving kind of knowledge sharing, insight about the sector, the job opportunities, all sorts of things. And then at the end of it, they're inviting them all to the pub, and they're running a pub quiz. And then the ones who do well in the pub quiz get some sort of prize. And that could be work experience. I suspect it's not cash. It will be something to do with that employer. But what they're trying to do is kind of maintain that awareness, interest over a longer period of time. And it sounds like it's working because the feedback from a member of the team who said this to me said students are really turning up and getting engaged in this. So that's something new. I haven't seen that before. And certainly last time we did this presentation, we hadn't come across that. But that feels like that's the employers trying to be innovative, I guess, in how they're doing this. And then the other thing, again, imagine some of you do, but actually picking schools and having, some of the schools are allowing stands to be put outside their area, but only one particular employer at a time. And if you can get that kind of spotlight focus, that obviously attracts attention and positions you quite nicely with that university. So I don't know if you're doing that either. But that's something I highly recommend you do, because all the team come back and say that really, really works. It stands out because they don't allow 10 stands, they allow one. Is there anything else you've noticed from employers that you thought that's a really, really good way to engage the students?
Yes, I would say, for example, we had an event where we had like the quizzes, and students were asked to participate in this quiz. They were asked questions about how much they knew about the career and how much they wanted to take it forward. So that kind of helped students in, especially in the first year, students who were not, whose minds were not made up on exactly what they wanted to do in the future. So such activities do help.
And were there any particular brands that you noticed on your campus and your peers noticed really standing out?
Yes.
Which ones? We won't offend anyone.
Well, I could talk about the NHS, for example.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, they came out with they were working with another accountancy institute, and they came out to promote this institute. And so they took part. They had 15-minute sessions within lectures, and they would ask students what exactly they wanted to do in the future, how they, in terms of career, whether they wanted to be, say, chartered accountants or management accountants or bankers, and then by so doing, they kind of filtered the students they wanted to, who were interested in working with the NHS, and by so doing, the students, they offered the students placements with the NHS. So the NHS, yes, it stood out in that respect.
I'm not surprised you're choosing the NHS, because I think they've really scaled up their activity, but that's a really good example. Thank you. Okay, this is my final slide, and then I'll pass to Dan for any questions. So these are the kind of key things that I've picked up from when I've been talking to employers as well. But some of the universities are really struggling to get students to attend their employer events. I genuinely believe that's down to what the event is. So if the event is the right format, at the right time, offering the right thing, kind of basic stuff, then the students will turn up. But I guess what the universities are worried about is obviously the reflection it has on them with the employers, that if they're kind of setting up an event and students are just not turning up. So obviously that is not good for the university, it's not good for the students, but it's definitely not good for the employer. So that's a bit of feedback we've had, that the attendance sometimes is pretty low. So that, I guess that goes back to what it is you're offering. Something that I guess I'm coming across more so is employers. We've seen them reducing their activity on campus, and that's because a lot of them are obviously moving into the schools market. And I guess for a number of you in here, if you're offering apprenticeships, you're probably having to split your time in a very different way with the existing resource, I imagine, quite similar to ourselves. But the universities are noticing that, the students are noticing this last presence, so that's going to be an interesting one to watch as apprenticeships either gain further momentum or maybe lose momentum. Who knows what will happen there, but I think it's definitely something that is very visible now on campus. Not all employers are there who used to be there. I don't know if you get asked this in accountancy. I don't know how much of you know about accountancy, but being asked by the students, keep saying, what's my work-life balance? And they want to know, they don't want to be at their job kind of 24/7. They want to know that they're going to have some rest time, they're going to be able to socialise. Socialising seems very, very important at the moment. And the other thing that we're finding is they're talking a lot about wanting to give something back. So again, I don't know if you're coming across that, but they want to know, if you're offering a career, what is it that will be meaningful to them, meaningful to society, meaningful to the kind of wider world? Could be. It's fascinating how that is more the question we're getting asked than how much will I earn. We still get asked that, obviously, but it's interesting to see that question's crept in. So I don't know how you're dealing with that with employers and whether you're bringing that into your messaging, but that's obviously something students will want to know, not only what's in it for them, but what are they going to give back, and what does that look like working with you as an employer. And then the last one on here is universities are looking for new ways. You might have seen this before. I'm just going to share with you one advert. This was from Henley Business School. They're actually going out through a large graduate kind of institute and promoting their postgrads. They're saying these people are here, they're ready, they're willing to come and work for you, and come and have a look at them. Now, I haven't personally seen that approach before from the university going. I think they went through the Institute of Student Employers, and they did mass campaign around this. I haven't seen that before, but it's interesting to see actually now the universities trying to drive the employers through. I mean, they're a great university, so the fact that they're doing some of this as well is interesting to see they're trying to push as well to get the employers to engage. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Sharon. So if you have any questions for Sharon or our students, if you don't mind, now's your opportunity. Questions about what's going on around us. Okay, well, that's someone.
So, Sharon, how do you identify the school campus ambassadors? Are they people that are already in the schools, or are they people that are on your payroll and you're putting them in the schools? How are you identifying?
Right, it's a good question. They're already in universities, and we do a recruitment process for those, just like an employer would, and we then apply for a position. We would actually go through an interview process, and we would choose someone, and we do that in all our universities, so we have campus ambassadors, so they're ready for the employee research.
More time for them then, because they're already in the union?
Yeah, I mean, it's flexible. So, in instance, today we'll do things that we need support on. So he might have a number of events one week, then he might not do anything the next week, and he's doing this today, he might not do anything. So we kind of will give him an idea of how much we'll be able to earn. I suspect at kind of the end of the year, but it will be spread out in different ways. But it works really, really well because for us, we use the campus ambassadors across universities insight group alongside their research. They've got so much insight, we use them in that way as well to share what they're hearing, what they're learning, so we can respond and react. Awesome as well.
Do you have one more question, if you don't mind? You talked about the parents' events. What are you typically covering in those, and are students attending along with the parents?
Yeah, I'm going to hand over to you because you're running them. Yeah.
So we hosted them for the last 2 years. So we're doing parent and school leave events at schools across the UK. So last spring we ran 14, which kind of covered all the main hotspots, but also cold spots in the UK. So I look after the London region, but we do find that it's a lot of people want to work in London, so it's letting parents and students know there are possibilities available elsewhere. And we basically cover an insight into chartered accountancy, let them know about the profession, what's available to them, but also the different routes, because one of the things that we find at ICAW is that a lot of people have this stigma about chartered accountancy, who it's available to, so we just basically want to get the word out there that it's available to all students who don't need a university degree, and basically help them start their research into the possibilities of career. And we do find that we get really good feedback from the parents, and they're often the ones that don't know that you don't need a degree, you can go in from certain subjects, it is available to a lot of students.
And how do you get at the parents? How do you identify the parents to the market to get them to come to your event?
So we market it through the schools and through the students. So we don't really have a direct contact list for the parents as such, but we use kind of as much social media, as much email outreach that we can that goes through the schools, and then it is kind of reliant on the schools and the students to pass it on to their parents.
Last question. So in terms of work experience, now you mentioned it, we're looking at trying to roll something out for work experience, maybe 16 to 18-year-olds. Do you find that a lot of businesses have work experience, maybe because 1 or 2 weeks they do.
Yeah, I think so. Something we offer is a free toolkit, work experience toolkit, which you're very welcome to download. It's for the individual and also the employer, and it sets out a structured work experience, 2-week period. But I would say most employers offer that. You can just go onto our website and download it. But the other thing you can do, we have something called training vacancies, and we advertise all the opportunities that are available, whether they're work experience, internships, school leaver programs, whatever it is. And you can go and look from there and look at the work experience that current employers are offering, and maybe get a feel for what you could offer yourselves.
And what are your views on society sponsorship? So many societies out there do this.
It's a good question. We used to do lots of it, and I think it's very difficult to choose which ones to do. Being quite honest with you, I think the ones that we probably do more of are international students. That's probably where we stand. But we don't really do much anymore, do we? I don't think we felt we got much back from.
Couple on Slido. One of them is, I mean, if you've got this at the weekend, the Guardian University Guide, so 121 universities in the UK. So one of the questions is, how do you decide which universities you're doing for the very first time?
The very first time. I mean, I guess
Do you look at the league table?
yeah, well, not necessarily, because we want diversity of students, is the answer to that. For us, we don't want to go to the usual suspects. So I guess it's working out, going to talk to some universities, I would suggest you do the start. And it's about building that rapport and relationship and seeing which type of people you can work with, and that you can kind of do something good with. And just kind of assessing the universities in terms of, are you going to be able to stand out? Is it kind of really crowded? Have you got like 100 employers currently trying to target that university on a certain day in a certain discipline? So I guess kind of think through some of those questions, but I genuinely believe it's about going into universities and seeing who you're going to be working with, and whether you've got something they want and whether they've got something you want, and then building a relationship that way. Starting small and then building as you kind of build a toolkit and how you the experience that you gain with each university. But I would start with a small group.
It's a good point, because a lot of also focus on the Russell group, the league tables, but the Guardian one actually put Nottingham Trent State University of the Year, and it actually became really highly ranked based on this survey. So it does pay to sort of invest in time in the less obvious ones to help you stand out and maybe reach students.
The employability programs as well, because if you look outside, you're quite right to be at Nottingham Trent, they're fantastic. Their employability programs are phenomenal. They're really kind of, that's where they're looking to stand out as a university in my mind, and I think they've succeeded. So they're a great organisation to work with. They're looking for innovative ideas, and they look to work with you rather than tell you what it is they expect and want from you. And I think that relationship is a good one. So I think looking at the kind of unusual suspects is kind of often a good way to go, because you can probably stretch boundaries and stretch what it is you offer on campus.
One other question on Slido, this was about your student meets. So timing is very important. There could be something the night before, an exam or whatever. What's the kind of turnout you're hoping for your students?
Ask Maria, but I guess what you would do is see how many employers you're getting. Because what you wouldn't want to do is have 5 employers show up and then have a room of 60 students. So you kind of have to work with the employers to see who's going to turn up and support the event.
Yeah.
And then work out a ratio that works. So like 2:1, but you don't want too many students. And you can kind of create some momentum with those students by saying first come, first served. These are great employers, get your name down on the list. So you can do it quite nicely, actually.
That's good. Excellent. Well, I've made lots of notes. I hope you have as well. We're out of time for this section, so we're going to have a break now. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Teas and coffee is served back out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. So yes, my name's Letty. I'm a strategist at a full-service digital agency called Zone. And I'm just going to give you a very whistle-stop tour through some, I suppose, some principles, approaches, and processes that we use when we're working with brands on their marketing that I think could be valuable for you to think about in your recruitment processes. So, Zone is an agency that's been set up to help ambitious businesses deliver mission-critical customer experiences. And that experiences element of that is really key to what we're talking about here. So this is across strategy, looking actually into the data and the insights that underpin all of this, the technology around the platforms and procedures that allow this to happen, and then actually the content, experiences, communications that inspire people, are useful and persuasive. And here again, if you're not helping someone or entertaining someone, then people aren't really going to be paying attention to their content. I'm just going to give you a bit of an idea of how you could get close to that. So, Zone, just a quick overview of some of our clients. So, some of the big ones that are particularly relevant in this area are sort of Adidas, Guide Dogs, Unilever, Barclays up there, all sorts of different kinds of clients. We have no particular sector that we work with. We work with huge corporate places, we work with small charities, and these are the kind of principles that we use across all of those. And I think that's particularly relevant when Dan was telling me some of the different people coming here today. I think you'll all be at such different points along this. Some of this, for some of you, might just be obvious and completely what you're doing already. Some of you might have to really push to get the budget to try any of this. But hopefully, again, so it's the principles and ways of approaching things rather than exactly what I'm telling you to do that should be the takeaway. And yeah, some just a couple of the sort of awards we won for some of this work. So this is a really cringe picture I've included to demonstrate that I myself was a graduate at this company. I was one of the very small intake of the first year that they trialled this scheme. So I'm really speaking from the experience of having a small company, what it meant for me to want to work with them, and the stuff that I've learned there. So this is actually almost evidence of the fact that that worked. So advertising versus content marketing. I mean, basically the way I would sum this up is advertising works if you've got a lot of money. If you don't have a lot of money, you're standing in a room shouting about yourself to nobody. Whereas content marketing is the pull that brings people in. So this is a great advert. Obviously, I don't even have to tell you who made this. You know just from looking at it. But that relies on already then having built up that brand and people being aware of that. That's when you can go into this kind of minimal, amazing place that it attracts people. This is obviously interesting to designers. This is a very aesthetic piece of work, but it's not. This is a poster. This isn't something that people go and interact with and spend time with. This doesn't help anyone. It entertains them that it's attractive, but it's not doing a lot of engagement. Whereas this is a really interesting piece of content that was produced by GCHQ. So this was very much focused around recruitment, and they actually built a kind of code cracking program that people would go to. They'd play about with this piece of interactive content, and those people who managed to actually break the code got the link to apply for jobs. Really interesting thing, obviously tells you a lot about what they stand for as a company. This isn't just them sitting there saying, we do things to do with code and it's interesting and you should like us because of this. It's actually giving people a chance to try that out, and it got a lot of PR off the back of it as well. This is another thing. This is obviously not owned by a brand, but I think it's just that kind of idea of the things that pick up people's attention, and some ways that you can also tap into those more kind of public awareness moments. So marketing used to be easy, I would say. This is very much a one-way communication. You've got your brand message. People aren't sort of messing with it. You just buy the media and shout at people. But this has changed. So this is a kind of controversial study. I'm not going to pick apart the detail of the 8 seconds. I've actually worked on a piece of research which said that it's down to 3 seconds whether people bother watching a video of yours. But the idea is that people, you know, the students you're looking at, they've got a lot of things trying to grab their attention. Presumably, all of you in this room are competing with each other and everybody else and Netflix and whether they want to set up their own entrepreneurial thing. So yeah, just a kind of reminder that people aren't paying a lot of attention to you, particularly old school advertising, the big singular brand messages, people aren't going to do it. So this is the way that we approach it at Zone. So we call this the Onion, and this is basically a tried and trusted, repeatable format for how you can get to something that works for you, no matter what your budget. So starting in the middle of the audience, the most important thing, I think it's quite, I would say you're in a pretty good position. You obviously know that your audience exists, you know roughly the age range, you know kind of where they are, and you know that they want what you've got. So you're starting in a much better position than if you would say launch a new product. But there's still a lot more to be done there. You can't just assume. And then we go out through what your brand point of view is, how you communicate that, where you communicate it, and what you're actually talking about. So I'll come back to each of those. So audience first, don't assume who people are. Go talk to them. I think what Sharon was saying earlier was the most valuable thing. So this is the way that we approach it at Zone. So we call this the Onion, and this is basically a tried and trusted, repeatable format for how you can get to something that works for you, no matter what your budget. So starting in the middle of the audience, the most important thing, I think it's quite, I would say you're in a pretty good position. You obviously know that your audience exists, you know roughly the age range, you know kind of where they are, and you know that they want what you've got. So you're starting in a much better position than if you would say launch a new product. But there's still a lot more to be done there. You can't just assume. And then we go out through what your brand point of view is, how you communicate that, where you communicate it, and what you're actually talking about. So I'll come back to each of those. So audience first, don't assume who people are. Go talk to them. I think what Sharon was saying earlier was the most valuable thing. Just don't assume you're talking to, a 21-year-old man thinks this. So there's lots of different ways you can do this. If you're just sat at your desk, there's obviously analytics across trends in YouTube, Google, that kind of thing, social listening. There's papers you can read. There's presumably kind of institutes that provide you with this kind of thing. But actually, I would say that this final one, the focus groups and interviews, is always going to be the most valuable. Just talk to these people, talk to the students, talk to the people that you recruited last year. I think you're probably sitting on a huge amount of people who you actually go talk to them. And like Sharon said, maybe you assume that they were brought in by the salary, but actually it was something completely different, which you haven't dialed up, that they managed to find out about. Just talk to those human beings. This is a video I'd like to play you, which talks a little bit about how we started taking more of that approach with Adidas.
To win the future with digital content, brands must behave like cutting-edge publishers, testing and learning with consumers in real time. Since January 2018, the Future Content Lab has been working to do exactly that. Identifying new ways to optimize content. Through workshops with global creators, from students at London's world-famous art school Central St Martin's, to global sneakerheads. Our recommendations are then tested within the business, and the results are proving promising. Identifying new dynamic ways to shoot models has seen 5% increase in conversion and 7% increase in add to cart. In 2019, we want to help Adidas reach its business goals even faster. To find out how we can help your team, contact the Future Content Lab. Adam Reed at Adidas, Matt Weiner at Zone Digital.
So that looks like a big budget video. It was not a big budget project. This was us going next door to Central St Martin's, talking with people, collecting up a group of people. We sat, we drew pictures with them, we asked them all about the shoes they liked, we went to shops with them. We just kind of built a relationship with these people. And it was amazing the things that came out of it that you don't even think. I remember one small thing that sticks in my head. It sounds inconsequential, but we were talking with them, and they were all saying about how they screenshot things on their phone. So anything they're reading on their phone, they want it to fit in the frame. If you've got a job description, paragraphs and paragraphs long, have a little summary, they screenshot, they save that. It's just a small insight, but it's really valuable. And like I said, talk to the people you've got. We just grabbed a bunch of people, bought some biscuits, sat in the kitchen and had a chat, and that is always going to be on the doorstep. So point of view, people don't care about you, harsh but true. You need to have this kind of this brand spirit, as it were. So I won't read this whole quote, but the idea is basically, if someone asked you what the Apple airline would look like or the Nike hotel, you would know that because you know what their point of view is. And having that clear point of view is really important. People, as again, the guy from GCHQ who made the code recruitment package, he said that it's actually giving people a taste of what we do in whatever form is the best hook. It's not just a case of kind of telling them the stats of it. People are buying into a life here. They want to understand what your company is outside of the kind of benefits package they're getting. Here, like with Pestle, differentiating themselves. Washing powder, it obviously washes. Great, I'm sure it washes really well. I'm sure the paragraph explains that. But actually, this idea of kind of dirt is good. We can buy this washing powder so your kids can go play and get messy was something that made a huge increase for them in how people engage with them. So they let them make these kind of quizzes and competitions, these partnerships with really influential people that parents were interested in. And I think that it's a case where that's the kind of thing that it's kind of, how can you flip it on its head? Like, obviously, everybody's recruiting people for, I'm sure, well-paid roles, interesting roles, but what differentiates you from the person sat next to you? I won't play this video, but this is something it allowed Pestle to create. It was these interviews with prisoners. The prisoners were being told about how children don't spend time outside. They spend about the same amount of time outside as the prisons do. It was this amazing piece of content that you'd actually think, what's that got to do with Pestle? But it drove huge revenue. So your point of view, who are you actually talking to? Is it Gen Z? Is it the ambitious ones? Is it the creative ones? What are the rest of your market saying to them? And actually, what's your brand? Are you a huge, a new PwC? Are you a gigantic global brand that's going to give them a huge program? Or are you a very local company? Are you somewhere like my company where they hired 4 of us? It was all about free toast. Like, just position yourselves at the right level. As I said, yeah, so this went from 400 million to 3 billion across the few years that they've shifted their brand position. Tone of voice, everyone sounds the same. So obviously tone of voice, you get on with people based on how well you can communicate with each other, the emotion you feel coming from them, and people do make these decisions, purchase decisions, job, university decisions. It's not just on the stats, it is on the kind of emotion behind it. So that tone of voice is really important. I won't go through all of these. This is just a little example of a piece of work we did. So this was when Tesco had been found to be selling horse meat. And they plummeted. People were really resentful of them. And we worked with them to help try and build that back up and give them a bit of tone of voice that wasn't, they weren't trying to shy away from it, but it wasn't the only thing they were talking about, and they weren't just blending in with everyone else. So these are what other supermarkets were talking about their plums and their clothing sales, and do you like to drink tea or coffee? Really boring. We started talking about Elton John and Countdown and biscuits. And bear in mind, this was a few years ago. Lots of brands are doing this now. I would not suggest that this is what you do. You have to stay on top of it. But it's basically, they're not talking about come buy our lettuce. There's a different way through. They're talking about it in a funny way. People enjoy reading these. It puts a smile on your face. A word of warning. As we said, this was kind of cutting edge a few years ago. It's awkward sometimes when brands get it wrong. So this is a very popular Twitter account. It skewers brands that slightly get slang wrong. Again, talk to young people. Test everything. Don't try and go in there with like what you think is the right tone of voice for how they're talking. And again, how not to do it. Don't just have principles that no one would have the opposite of. I know it sounds kind of obvious, but if your principles around your recruitment are that you're trying to tell people about the amazing packages they're going to get and all the great benefits, no one's going out there telling them about all the awful things that are going to happen in a really dishonest tone of voice. So it's not really a tone of voice, it's just being sensible. So find something a little bit more unique. There's lots of guidelines out there you can look at. So Monzo, the BBC, the Guardian, Gov.uk, they've all got great tone of voice principles that you can kind of pick and choose bits from, see how they lay them out, see some of the interesting examples there. However, I would say tone of voice is really important. It's really important to be consistent amongst the team, consistent between whatever your marketing department's saying, whatever you're putting out in your recruitment tweets, how the job descriptions sound in that tone of voice. But don't lose the voices of real people in amongst that. So these are a couple of examples. A blog post from a grad at a design agency that I love. He's written this really honest article about how when he got there, it was terrifying. His design school hadn't prepared him for anything. He had a really tough time, and then he ended up loving it. So it's like a really quite blunt article. It wasn't saying just like, I've had such a lovely time since my first day. And this other piece on the side is a newsletter that I write for my company. It kind of let me write whatever I want. I write quite critical things, quite like cynical tech-agnostic things, which for a digital agency is risky, but people seem to really enjoy it. So I say kind of have your tone of voice principles, but have wiggle room to let some other opinions and voices through. Channel and posting, I won't go hugely into this, but basically don't try and put everything everywhere. Don't try and make a Facebook post that you put on Twitter that you convert into LinkedIn. Just pick and choose. I imagine LinkedIn's probably really big for you. I think Instagram is really big as well for just sort of employer brands. I'd be hesitant. I don't work in recruitment, but I would say I can't imagine Facebook's massive. There's not all that many young people that into it anymore. Just pay attention to where, put things out, test, learn, see what's doing well, and don't try and cover everything. So appropriate for the channel. This is, again, a bit of a long quote, but the thing I wanted to pick out is GCHQ talking about Pinterest. I think people have a bit of a cliche of Pinterest as where people put together their kind of weddings and their bedrooms and clothes. But if there's an audience there that you're not maybe reaching elsewhere, have a go. Like, just experiment with things. If it doesn't work, don't do it again. You haven't made a huge app, you haven't lost a huge amount of money. Do some experiments. And then as you build those, you can start putting together some more structure. So if it's not just you and your team, there's an easy way for you all to be kind of singing from the same hymn book, as it were, with room to adapt to new things that are coming in.
That slide is really interesting.
Yeah? Do you want to?
Yeah.
I can send it round. So this is basically talking about what's your audiences, where are they active, and what kind of formats are appropriate to each of those different audience groups. So this is a Maersk example, which I'm going to come back to later, where you've got these kind of brand enthusiasts. They love seeing massive ships. So Maersk puts loads of big ships on their Instagram. However, they actually want to be talking to journalists on Twitter who don't really care about just big, beautiful pictures of ships. They're putting their thought leadership out there. So it's just about kind of sensing what's appropriate. Where is each audience living, and what do they want to do there? So this is something that you can put together so your team can kind of have a bit of a logistical recipe for where things go. And I'll send it around. As I keep banging on, this is our main principle. Put something out, test, learn from it, adapt. That's always going to be best for your organisation. I can't really tell you what to do, but you can learn what to do based on these principles. That one. So these are a couple of examples. They may not be as relevant to you, but don't discard the idea. This is kind of having your point of view on something that's going on and just kind of targeting that moment. So this was when Drake was accused of just having like someone else writing all his music, writing all his raps. Tesco just jumped on that with like a little funny tweet. It's kind of throwaway, but it's just keeping them in there in the news, and actually this got picked up. Cosmopolitan's talking about it, then it's out there. And similarly with the GCHQ, it might not be the people who see it the first time, but someone reading a newspaper sees it, is interested in you, might want to apply for jobs. Likewise, this was Gatwick. Do you remember when this woman texted Gatwick? Yeah. So again, we replied back to her. It was funny, it was sweet. It's not going to like get everyone to apply for this specific job, but it's just continually building that personality and that relationship. And this is, again, I'll send these around because I realise I've got a lot of slides to go through, but this is a kind of model of how you do that reactive content. So you've got a set of assets that you can adapt, but you also like every morning paying attention to what's going on. And I think the really key thing here is having the sort of the trust from whoever supervises you in your organisation. So like I said, with my newsletter that I sent out, obviously they were reading it the first few times, but then you get to a point where people trust you enough that you can react quickly and you don't have a big sign-off process of however many days. This is similar to the channel strategy. So again, dependent on how into you people are at different stages, they're going to be in different places wanting different content. So someone who already really wants to apply for your job is probably there in your blog learning how best to do that. They're going to want very different content from someone who's just kind of casually heard of you, wants to check you out on Instagram, doesn't want to be straight away bombarded by just descriptions of jobs. And likewise, blogs kind of on and off site. So this one, on this side, this is another design agency that I love. I go read their blogs all the time. I'd love to work there because I find it fascinating reading what they do, but that's kind of because I've already heard of them. Whereas this is my company, Zone. We actually publish our blog on our website and to Medium. So people who are on Medium anyway, wanting to learn about Agile, find us, rather than having to come in and find us because they already know they exist. Paid promotion, I won't talk a lot about this. You do need to put some pay behind social, but not a huge amount. I think you can look into, depending on what demographics you're looking at, depending on what kind of formats you're using, this kind of scales up and down. The best people to talk to are the social platforms themselves. They'll give you the best guidance. But just being aware that you might need to reserve a little budget for that. I'm not going to play a lot of these, but I just wanted to give you an idea. So these are a couple of different treatments on that testing point for guide dogs. So this basically the idea being that oh no, I did pause it. The idea of this little girl's shouting, you realise the kind of denouement of the ad is that her father is blind, so she's shouting where she is. Works amazingly for TV, does not work for social. People don't have the sound on social. People will just see that as a video of a field for a while. So we make a different treatment. It's the same thing, just a little bit of extra laid on top, but we tested it, we've learned what's more appropriate in different places, so you can reuse it. Topics. This is a blueprint for Wellcome Trust, the public health organisation. And the idea here being, these are the topics that are really important to the audiences they want to talk about. So I assume the students, they're interested in kind of, well, it'll be different for each of you, that's the idea. So these are the topics that they are keen on. And then this side is more the topics that we might have some kind of credibility in. So we need to be getting into these conversations and kind of establishing our authority there. And then we need to make the topics that we have, well, I suppose, make ourselves more relevant to those topics, if that makes sense. So find the hook that's how you relate to a particular topic that's relevant to your audience. And then there's some topics that we have more credibility in that you need to make more interesting. So an example of this would be that Wellcome found out that actually, Ebola was a huge topic of interest, and they had some credibility there. They'd funded some of the vaccine towards that. People didn't know that. That was their kind of hook in, and off the back of that, we made a big piece of content about public health. But if we hadn't had this, we might have been off in the space of kind of trying to talk about cancer, which is a hugely crowded market. It's not something Wellcome Trust has a lot of authority on, or perhaps a lot of awareness on. So this kind of plotting of where your topics sit in relation to how much you can talk about them and how much the audience cares about them is really valuable. You've probably seen this before. This is the idea that you have your hero content, your big kind of flashy video, you make a couple of them a year. You've got your hub content that might be like a series that you publish on your blog or on YouTube, something interesting like the skills sessions, that type of thing, something a little bit more regular. And then hygiene content, which is a lot more about kind of SEO and what people are looking for. So I imagine a lot of people type into Google, how do I put my CV together? It's that kind of, you're answering a need, but it's not particularly world shattering, and that's your more regular, cheaper to produce, always on content. So this is just an example of a recruitment design agency that we thought were quite interesting, that our recruiters pointed out to us. So they're all about car design. And they're all about car design. They are sector experts. They have a podcast about car design, about design philosophy. They're obviously very knowledgeable, interested in the topic. They go to all these events, they post these beautiful cars, kind of like the shift example. This is just cool stuff that car designers want to look at. And then they slip in that they've got some jobs as well. They're not leading with the jobs, but it's also there. Another word of warning. These topics that you're talking about, do think about the context. You might have seen this go out recently. This was Chase Bank in America. They're trying to appeal to young people. They know young people are trying to budget. Perfect. We'll make a funny little piece around how you can budget. And people called them out on the fact that they actually have huge fees that are imposed on young people. They take massive bailouts. They're like tax avoiding. It doesn't work. You can't talk about that topic if it doesn't fit in with the context of how we're known. And evergreen content. So this is that kind of blog, that hygiene content, the like, how do I put my CV together? How do I, there's different kinds of skills. But I just thought I'd include this example. This is some work we did with Attendees, where we basically took a lot of their content that they had, put it in front of some students, and effectively had them mark it. We gave them a little score sheet, and we had people saying, I wouldn't finish reading this. I know all of this anyway. It's not very surprising. So that's, again, kind of underestimating the audience. Don't just give them 10 ways to write your CV. Make sure you spell your name right. Let's actually get into some interesting stuff that they're going to care about and put it in front of people and check that. So, bringing all of this together. This is a video that I won't go out to now because it goes out to YouTube, but I'll share the slides so you can see it. This is just a bit about kind of making that creativity around the stuff you're putting together. So once you know who your audience is, what your view on the world is, how you're talking to them, where you're talking to them, making it a bit creative and a bit memorable is this idea of sticky content. So it's those simple, unexpected stories. I think the personal one is a great example. It's a simple idea, the fact that, prisoners get more outside time than children, and it's a really emotional story that they've built that around. And this is the diagram that a lot of people like. It's probably quite hard to see, but the idea here is that this is, I imagine a lot of you will be working kind of hand in hand with your marketing departments. There's probably a lot of fingers in the pie of who wants to talk to who, where. You probably, I imagine there might be some people wanting to talk to clients or consumers, and then you're there trying to talk to students. And this is a diagram that I would recommend that you all put together with the different people in your organisation it's relevant to, about what topics you talk about, who you're talking to, and how. So it's kind of a funnel that things go through. If someone, and I imagine it's possible you've had pushback from marketing before, if you show up with a little job description saying, please put this out, and they say, no, we're not putting that out. It's just a boring list of facts. This is a kind of, I suppose, both for you and for them, getting you to be on the same page. So if you're putting out that, what's your hook? What's going to make it interesting? What's creative? Is the tone right? Have they talked about something very similar yesterday and you've just not staggered your content correctly? So yeah, these kind of decision trees of, are we talking about the right thing in the right place to the right people, are really helpful in actually putting this into process in your organisation. This is a simpler one. This is for Attendees. It's kind of just yes, no. This can apply for tone of voice, it can apply for topics, it can apply for kind of what different channels you're putting things on. So just people can have this and they can, I suppose, in a sense, it stops the debates between different departments. So you're saving budget because you just know what's going out. And I also wanted to just kind of end on this point about service design. So the idea that people are on a whole continuous journey with you. I don't know if you're all responsible for creating the marketing posts you put out and the job descriptions. I think if it's one person doing that, maybe it makes sense. But if you've got a kind of beautiful Instagram feed all about your brand and what it's like to work there, and then you get onto the job page and it's like cold, boring copy. I think some job descriptions are not very inspiring given how big a life decision it is. Then there's that just kind of disconnect in the journey. So this is an example I really like. You get onto their careers page, and it's still this amazing piece of content, these kind of exciting principles. It's not straight away like, we will pay for this amount. So yeah, having that continuity through the whole journey. These are a couple of stats I just thought I'd finish with to hammer at home. So some of the guide dogs work we did, so they really wanted to target young male people through this social strategy of shifting to actually a focus on like sport and exciting things and kind of people outliving their lives. They managed to double their Facebook. They went from 19% male audience to 46% male audience, and they actually shifted their whole perception up from 15th to 3rd in the Charity Buzz Index, and this is just from the social content. Again, Maersk, they were really trying to make these real world connections happen. They stopped posting all the ships everywhere, started doing these thought leadership pieces, and managed to set up partnerships with the International Trade Centre off the back of these conversations they were having. BT Sport, 6% revenue growth, 16% higher satisfaction in the people who were actually subscribing to these pieces of content. Coca-Cola, I think this is my favourite one. There's a pure content-led piece of work all about the different kind of, I suppose, things mums can do with their kids, but with a Coca-Cola angle. And it actually increased trust in the brand, 31% from the mums who visited that site. So, that is, 30% extra value per dollar. I realise I've spoken extremely fast because I wanted to get a lot in, but I can send these slides around. And does anyone have any questions?
Letty? Thank you for sharing from working with some really big brands and lots of massive recruiters. One of the most important bit of content that recruiters put out is the job ad. You spin back to that that one.
Yeah.
So, investing time at the very least in getting this right is what we do a lot for our clients. Not so that, but it's so easy to just cut and paste the job description into an ad and get it out and move on to the next thing. But investing time in making something like this.
Yeah. I think it's completely, because you don't want to be sort of, I think what people don't want is to feel like they've been sales stacked on social and then they get to the heart of it and it's just, like you said, not a lot of thought put into it. Just seeing what can you do to make your job descriptions more exciting. Can there be videos in there, or is it just list bullet points?
What was the fear factor about videos?
What videos one way to do it?
Yeah.
Those Tesco points, there's no video there, there's no big budget behind it. It's just speaking to people in a slightly different way.
That's not video or different.
We did video job descriptions. We saw like a large increase in the number of people actually apply because they were having, it was someone that was actually doing the job or the manager, engaging with them. So they got more of a feel about people, and I think that actually it's that emotion.
Completely, and that is what underpins everything I was talking about with the brand point of view, the tone of voice. Those are terms really that are just trying to put some structure around the fact that it's humans you're going to be working with. It's an organisation that has a spirit of some sort. What is that? Not just what's the desk I'm going to sit at and what I'm going to do all day.
We had quite a few where it was really useful. We have quite a substantial amount of video job descriptions, and they're really useful tools actually deselecting people as well, because it is when you see a massive amount of job descriptions, we found that people would see 3 or 4 points that they related to, ignored the 7 or 8 that they don't, but still went on to apply. Whereas videos, the amount of engagement that they get throughout the whole thing didn't only just increase our amount of successful people, also reduce the amount of unsuccessful.
Quality, yeah.
We work in the defence industry, so I'm interested to know if you've got any examples or ideas or thoughts about how to make that message a little bit softer from a brand perspective.
I actually, let me go back to one of the videos I didn't play. This is a Navy recruitment video. You might have seen it. I think they've been a really successful campaign. This is going to go out to YouTube. Let's see if it works.
A women's place. I decided it was up to me where that was. And it was in the Navy. Yep, said that I wanted the night. Get it, show me you're coming and I'm ready. Ship looking rocky, but I'm steady. Yep, I know it. Said that I wanted the night. Get it, show me you're coming and I'm ready. Ship looking rocky, but I'm steady.
So I won't read the whole thing. But you get the idea here. Again, this is showing, so it's got these kind of 2 strands running through. She's got the enjoyable side of it. You see her kind of building her life within it, and then you see the strand of her just through those different exercise videos. She's getting stronger across the process. This is not something that's actually talking really at all about what she's doing as a member of the Navy, but it's just kind of taking you into that world and giving you a perspective on it that people might not have had before. Like you say, the sort of the softer side of showing a bit of what that life is and what it means to be a young person, like what she's getting out of it, but also the music that you would hear. I think this is like an Adidas advert music. It's not what you'd expect.
It's environment, cultural
Yeah.
rather than product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think then you go into that further on, that you don't start with these are going to be your hours. This is how it all goes together. I'd recommend checking out some more of the Navy ones.
Thank you.
Question on Slido, kind of along those lines where the perception of your industry isn't like it to be.
Yeah.
How you're against the tide. How do you? I suppose you have to get very, very creative.
Yeah. I think there's 2 points I want to make there. If the perception of your industry or your brand is negative, and actually there's good cause behind that, then there's a lot more work that needs to happen before you get to this point. You know, you don't have to be crude, the polishing a turd. You don't want to be kind of doing sales on something that you don't actually have a lot of backing behind. But if actually you really believe in the brand and it's a great place to work, but there's been something's happened, there's some negative press around it, I think it's going back to that. Either this Navy example, the Tesco example, is taking a little step back from being like, please love us and come work for us, all in one message, and spending a bit more time on the kind of the pieces that are more around, an article from a young person working on the inside, being really honest. So you don't feel like they've just kind of been told, oh, just say how great we are, make everyone realise how great we are. I think it's just that kind of judging your level of honesty. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the term influencers.
Yeah.
Comes up a lot, and you've also got the budget for the Kardashian or whatever you want to. But there are micro.
And people don't. I think there's this sort of how influential you are in terms of like how big you are and how much influence you actually have gets to a point where it drops back down again. That Kim Kardashian world is kind of past now. I think it is the small relevant ones. So we do work with Mumsnet and that kind of place where actually you're talking to people who've got blogs with a fair few thousand followers, but you're not trying to target those massive people who are out of touch and who, frankly, your audience knows you just paid them a big pot of money to talk about something. Like those influencers who are really, really kind of relevant to what you are, but also small and have a bit more of an engaged audience. Having a selection of them is always more valuable than a big one-off. And having that kind of, I think it's back to that sort of thought leadership area with them. You don't just want them posting nice pictures of you. Maybe you want them talking about how they've had an impact on, how your company has had an impact on them. I think there's this interesting trend that's happened, which has gone from beauty influencers kind of holding up a bottle and saying like, oh, this is this great shampoo, to actually they now do this thing called empties, where they just show bottles of the things that they actually use in their life. So it's that slightly more honest, slightly more raw. I haven't just been sent this bottle in the post, but look, this is kind of my empties, my products that I really use. And I think if you can cultivate some of those relationships with smaller people, that would be very valuable.
Hi. So you did mention earlier that sometimes there are clashes with marketing. Obviously, so we work for a pretty big organization and our goals are not always the same when it comes to recruitment and posting careers. So would you recommend actually creating like a different handle or a different page for just careers?
I don't know enough about your data to give you a yes or no, but I would recommend probably not splitting yourself, not fracturing yourself too small. I think if you can use some of those, if you can actually have a workshop with all the competing voices, just ask your organisation if they can set up a workshop so you can put together something like that decision tree together just in an afternoon, because hopefully you'd hope that you're not wanting to talk about such different things. Like if your marketing organisation wants to talk about how great your company is, you also want to talk about how great your company is. It's just kind of to what end. So it's more differing the goals of the pieces of content rather than the whole tone of voice and brand and everything. Like I say, some of you might have a really strong brand already and it's just about making yourselves work with that. And in terms of a posting schedule, I think I think sit with marketing and see why they might not be letting you in. Maybe they don't think it's so valuable. Maybe you can put some tests together. You can agree a program where you have some test content that goes out that you tweak with them, and they kind of give you some space for that, and then learn off the back of that.
I work in the tech industry, and I think a challenge that will be shared by anybody else who does as well, is the attraction of women into this sort of industry. I wonder if you have any kind of advice on how we might go about attracting more women and kind of diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't want to keep going back to the same examples, but I think this article, this advert, if you look back at the beginning, or maybe it's at the end, the message. They go with this really. It's obviously not controversial, but they're leaning into the awareness that like they probably have a bit of a problem recruiting women. There's all these these cultural ideas of women's places in the home, and they're taking that and flipping it. So I think if it works for you, again, Tess, I think acknowledging it, but in a positive and powerful way, can be really good. So this is showing this great, like, strong, interesting, cool woman, and that her place is in the Navy. It's not kind of sitting there being like, we'd really love more women to join us because we don't have any women. Does that kind of? I think it's a really interesting one. I mean, Guide Dogs kind of had the reverse of that, where they had a big audience of older women, and they wanted to get more into a kind of young male audience. So they went out and talked to some young men, and they started. I don't want to sound too cliche. They started producing the sport content. Not to say women don't like sport or men only like sport, but it did resonate with them. So I suppose I'd say just having that visibility of the women that are there and showing that that's a really consistent part of your brand. I think that's somewhere that people fall down, particularly on. I know, so it's kind of when you have like this month, it's International Women's Day or like LGBTQ month or something like that. When brands only talk about those topics because their calendar says so, that's when it's kind of false. But if you actually bring some of these things in as more of your consistent part of your point of view, is that you think there's some great opportunities for women in tech, and you think that there should be more awareness of that. Like, bake it in and make it more regular. Don't just do a kind of one-off like, it's Women's Day. So, yeah.
Hello, hi. I'm interested in how you kind of sort of introduced, say, if you're working with a brand and you do something like Tesco and they suddenly start making all these funny jokes and sort of differentiate themselves from how they were before, whether you kind of see brands sort of phasing that in, whether it is a kind of switch from one, like how they used to do it to how they're new doing it. So I work for the post office and we sort of shifted what our Instagram has been.
Mm-hmm.
But do you ever find there's a bit of a backlash about kind of that kind of sudden switch, or do you find that audiences react better to a sort of phase?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Let me think, because I think it's again, it all comes back to that brand point of view. I think if there's a perception that one day your point of view was this, and then you just turned it off and went to this, that probably does feel a little bit jarring to your existing audience. So I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I would say that it's about having people believe in the integrity of your point of view, not that it's just something you've come up with that day because it seems popular, is really crucial. So yeah, if there's ways you can kind of slowly start getting more into those conversations, you put out one particular thought leadership piece, or those kind of, you're dialing that up, then I think that probably would be more valuable than just like close the lid and then
It's actually back to the kind of women in tech point. We're a tech company as well.
Yeah.
Have the same problem. Over the past few weeks, I've put together a lot of marketing, some content to put out about it, highlights the issue, and I think a kind of honest approach. Yes, we do have this problem, particularly in our company. When putting forward to our CEO, there was like a lot of like backlash because he didn't kind of want to put his hands up in the air. It's almost like kind of worried, scared from it. At the end of the day, it's my job, but it's his company.
Yeah.
How do you approach those conversations with people?
I think it's interesting. And I think it's particularly interesting the part about the those internal conflicts. The thing that's going to change his mind is you putting out some content that works. But unfortunately, obviously, that's a chicken and egg situation. I don't know if there's anything, if there's any way you could kind of convince them to let you have a bit of an experiment. Maybe dial down some of the extreme messaging if you're saying, we have this huge problem, we're really awful, we're sorry. If you can take that more positive spin on it. So an example that we had was Coca-Cola. So the sugar tax came in. They can't ignore it. They have to kind of put a spin on it, which is like, we've made this amazing change, so now we've got lots of drinks that don't have as much sugar. It's kind of acknowledging that, yes, we had a problem, we had a lot of sugar, but this is something great we've done about it. That might be a hook that you can get with it, if you can find any positive stories that kind of let them feel like you're not just saying, this is awful. But at the end of the day, I think the belief that you can keep the lid on that kind of thing is kind of a bit old school. Like, companies have to publish gender pay gap reports, that kind of thing. I think if you're not acknowledging it at all, but it's still information that is obvious and out there, then that's going to be more detrimental. So yeah, I say ask if you can do some experiments with something that's a little bit positive and then see from there.
We'll show you what competitors do.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. That's a really, really valuable thing. Like if we go back to all those boring supermarket tweets about plums and stuff, maybe someone in one of those organisations needs all that put out. Like, look, you're all talking about plums, and you say that they're talking about plums. And these ones are doing something different. So yes, you're going to stay safe, but you're going to stay exactly as you are.
Another one on Slido. How do you attract specific audiences without leaving other audiences out, i.e. more women in finance without disregarding others?
So, i.e. the idea that if you started producing more content which was about women, then you might have some men there.
This ad might deter guys.
Yeah. It might, but it's also, if we go out to their page, you see that this is one amongst a lot of bespoke adverts. So this was part of a campaign. They're not just targeting women. Oh, started there. Sorry. There's a big campaign. There was a lot which were kind of targeting people who maybe hadn't gone to school or some other factor that made them not the typical candidate. But that wasn't kind of just. I suppose you've got to balance your things. If you've got 90% of the people who you always get, is losing 5% of them because they don't want to work somewhere where they think women are going to work their worst thing. I think. Sorry, it's a bit of a slippery answer, but I think again it's the testing and seeing what the priorities are, and you've got those kind of pillars of content. You're not going to suddenly only talk about women, but it's just making sure that it's there as a consistent part of your kind of.
Including everyone.
Well, this particular campaign, I think I don't know exactly the thinking behind it, but I know they definitely had a lot of different ones, which were they had a really great advert which was about I think it was a Muslim soldier who it was his kind of time for prayer, and he had some other soldiers around him who were just making space for him for that. It's just that it's that slightly unexpected angle on the story and really valuable, but that's not kind of to say that that's the only thing they're talking about. That makes sense.
Any other questions for Letty? We've gone through some really good examples in a very short space of time. So we'll get these slides and the opportunity to ask any questions on the LinkedIn forum. Is there anything right now that's got a campaign coming up that Letty can?
My email address is on the side if anyone wants to send anything like that. So, yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. Super. So that's all for today. Thank you for coming along. Our next event is in September. Back here as well. So let's thank our host once again, Sharon at ICW. And also for Letty speaking as well. Great weekend and see you next time. So there we are, another interesting GRN Masterclass event. I hope you enjoyed it if you were unable to attend on this occasion. The next event is on September the 11th. Do visit graduaterecruitersnetwork.co.uk to book your place. Thank you.